Welcome to another round of Electrifying's Would You Rather.
Today we are going to pit the Ford Mustang Mach-E against the Tesla Model Y.
Ladies and gentlemen, place your bets please.
No, because that's not the game. But if there are cars that you want us to test in another edition of
Would You Rather?
then please do let us know in the comments below. Hey, that rhymed.
So do let us know which one of these two cars you would rather own. And no, you can't just come up with another completely different car. It doesn't work like that. So why are we here playing our favourite game, Would You Rather? Well, it's because just a couple of weeks ago in July 2022, Ford increased the price of their all-electric SUV by several £1,000s. They cited increased material and energy costs as the reason. And that means that this dual motor or wheel drive version now costs £60,080.
And the problem with that is parked over there. The Tesla Model Y long range weighs in at around £58,000. So they're actually quite similar in price, with the Tesla being slightly cheaper. So which one is best?
So looks only,
Yeah.
which would you go for?
Immediately Ford. The Mach-E looks way better than the Model Y.
Yeah, I didn't love it at first actually, but it's been a slow burner and I agree, I do think it looks really nice. And we did our Electric Virgins podcast with Toby Anstis, didn't we?
Toby Anstis, Heart DJ.
Yes, he did. He loved it. He thought it looked amazing. I actually don't mind the way the Y looks.
No!
You can't just say no.
I can. It looks inflated. It looks like someone's got one of those foot pumps and just gone...
I actually just think it looks like it's got road presence.
I mean, it does look quite clean and quite crisp, but compared to the Ford, I think that looks quite sporty.
I'll tell you, it wins hands down or wheels down. Those wheels look great compared to those.
But weirdly, they're the small wheels. They're the 19-inch wheels.
I don't want my wheels to make that noise, that plasticky noise. I want them to be solid.
I think we are agreeing here. It's an interesting one, but in terms of just driving past on the road, it's the Ford all day. Well, anything with a Ford badge on it, or indeed the Ford name, is generally quite good looking.
You know, looks are so subjective, aren't they? So do let us know what you think in the comment below. Is the Ford really as good looking as it likes to think it is?
It's a bit cruel.
The Mach-E also looks great, although it's a completely different take on the electric car theme. Still a 5-seater with a hatchback, it's got a longer bonnet and slightly higher stance. But it's also got some nice details and decent surfacing. Beware though, Mach-E's on small wheels look really weird. This one's on the standard 19s, and the only option on this car is the space white paint job for £800. But spec'd properly, the Mach-E can be a really handsome car. So that's kind of a draw, it just depends on which one you prefer. After all, you're the one that has to walk up to it every day.
Inside, the Ford does create quite the impression, mainly thanks to this massive 15.5-inch touchscreen, which seems like it's just been stapled into the middle of the dash. It does actually work quite nicely. It's quite responsive. All the graphics are nice and crisp and clear. The one thing that does bother me is this volume control ring in the middle here, because it feels like it's stuck into the middle of the touchscreen. You can see touchscreen through the middle and around the sides. It just makes me feel a bit strange. Then there is a slim information display in front of you, gives you stuff like battery percentage, range, what gear you're in, that kind of stuff. In the centre, you've got plenty of storage. There's wireless charging here with USBs there, cup holders. More stuff in here, there's a place to put your handbag. It does feel quite nicely put together, I have to say. The materials are nice and it seems quite well equipped. Ford, in this particular model, does provide a really rather useful little laminated card for all of its press cars, and I'll just give you some highlights. It's got full Sensico trim, which is this kind of fake leather with red stitching, heated driver and passenger seats, heated wheel, 8-way power driver and passenger seats. It's got 19-inch alloys, LED lights front and back, climate control, lots of advanced driver assistance systems. It's pretty well equipped, and actually it's quite comfortable. When I first got in it, I did think these seats were a little bit flat, not quite long enough in the leg for me, but I've been driving it now for a couple of days and actually they're quite comfy, and generally it's quite an easy place to get used to. You're sighting down the bonnet. Once you've sorted out the seating, this is all right. Generally quite happy.
There's also loads of space in the back and a decent boot.
More? Well, there is a 100-litre frunk up front, which is a properly useful space. You can actually store things like charging cables in it with no trouble at all. In fact, that is something that makes it quite a practical car. This is quite a useful looking machine. Although the handle for the front is actually down there in the passenger footwell, so you either have to do something very ungainly like this or get out, go round and open the passenger door to open your frunk.
Unfortunately for the Mach-E, when it comes to boot space, it gets absolutely pasted by the Tesla. The boot space on the Ford is 322 litres. On this, with the added drop space that you'll find under the floor, it's a whopping 854 litres. And if you drop the seats in both, the Ford manages 1,420 litres of space, while the Tesla is basically a small van. That's 2,158 litres space fans. And yes, the Y also has a frunk, and guess what? Yeah, it's bigger than the Mustangs. You know, the Y's a bit like a TARDIS. You know, even the back seats have got loads of space. I'm not quite sure where they managed to get all that space from, but it's an excellent lesson in the art of packaging. Up front, well, it's just pretty much like, yes, you guessed it, the Tesla Model 3. So you get this big 15-inch touchscreen in the middle, and of course not much else. Now look, I know that some people find this kind of pared back look a little bit daunting if you're used to a more traditional layout, but honestly, completely honestly, give it a week and all this is completely second nature. You know, overall it also feels much more airy and spacious than the Ford in here. It's got a nice Scandi feel with lovely touches like the wood. You know, both interiors work. I think the Ford is a bit easier to understand immediately, but overall this one gets my vote. However, where you can't deny that it is let down slightly is on the build quality. On this particular model, there are a few issues that just don't give it that polished feeling that you get with the Ford.
As far as getting juiced up goes, this standard range all-wheel drive Mach-E has a 68 kWh battery that, in theory, delivers just under 250 miles of WLTP range, which is okay. It's got 109 kilowatts of DC fast charging ability and an 11 kilowatt onboard AC charger, which again is only just good enough these days, rather than particularly impressive. Basically, you're looking at 11 hours on a home wall box and 40 minutes 10 to 80% on a big enough rapid public charger.
Unfortunately for the Ford, the Model Y excels at the Electron pump. For the same price as the standard range Mach-E, you get a long range Y. Now that means a bigger 75 kilowatt hour battery and 331 possible miles of WLTP range, which will be a massive difference in the real world, even if neither car will hit those figures in reality. And that will make the difference between stopping for a charge and getting home in one go. But even ignoring Tesla's supercharging network, the Y still kills it. There's 250 kilowatt DC charging, meaning that if you can get to a big enough rapid charger, 10 to 80% charge is just half an hour of your time. It's got the same 11 kilowatt AC charging ability as the Ford and will take a shade longer on a typical home wall box to charge fully at 12 hours. But that is because it's got a bigger battery.
But you get more of everything from the Y. On a big enough charger, the Ford will add about 140 miles of charge in 40 minutes. The Y puts in 185 miles in 30 minutes. So you can see where the advantages come if you're on a road trip.
So here we are in the Mustang Mach-E, and I've been driving this car for a couple of days now, and I think I quite like it. I quite like the way it does things. It's very quiet on a motorway. It's quite pleasant. I mean, this version is the standard range all-wheel drive, and it's got 266 brake horsepower, slightly more torque than the Tesla, believe it or not. So it feels quite urgent. Does 0 to 62 miles an hour in 6.3 seconds, so it will see off a normally aspirated hot hatch. A Golf GTI won't stand a chance, but it's a strange car in that it feels like the ride should be better. Now, this car is on the standard 19-inch wheels, which only look okay, and they're by no means the biggest wheels you can have on a Mach-E, and this car still doesn't ride as well as I thought it would. I sort of look at the wheels and the big boofy tyres and think this car will be quite plush, but actually it's not. Now that obviously has an advantage when it comes to going around corners because the car stays quite flat, but I would have appreciated a little bit more comfort, to be honest. And I've tried it in all the different drive modes, of which there are 3. There's Whisper, Active and Untamed. Now Whisper is the quiet mode, sort of analogous to an eco mode in other electric cars. So that knocks back all the responses, makes it quite a calm car to drive. Then there's active, which is normal mode, which is most of the power, slightly heavier steering, slightly quicker throttle. And you could start to hear, can you hear that? When you put the throttle down, you get a bit of generated synthetic noise. And then if you put it into untamed, which is the spicy mode, which means that everything's sort of hopped up slightly, throttle response is sharper, steering is slightly heavier. Listen. You get that kind of digital synthesized V8 noise. Now, I don't mind that. I think that we're humans and we have sight, hearing, touch, taste, and if you can appeal to more of your senses, it works, although the noise doesn't absolutely match what the car is doing, so it's slightly discombobulating. Other than that, there's brake regeneration. So you can have a soft brake regeneration, which is actually quite soft. It does slow the car. I use that a little bit on the motorway. And if you want full one pedal drive, you have to go into one pedal drive. It's in controls. It really does work, but what I don't like doing is having to go through settings menus on a touchscreen on the move to set something that I might use quite a lot. Now, I do like the one pedal drive. I think it works very well. It's quite aggressive, look, slowing us down, but I want it to be on paddles behind the steering wheel so I can click it on and off as and when I want it. And the Mach-E has it buried ever so slightly in the touchscreen. And having been spending some time with this car, the touchscreen, having everything in the touchscreen, I do find it more and more annoying. Because even though you do get used to this stuff, and if you own the car and spend all of your time in it, I'm sure it becomes more second nature. But for me, I think they're quite distracting, big touchscreens. I think if you're going down a bumpy road, it's very hard to touch a specific part of a touchscreen. And I wish all the often used functions of a car were on a button. I know that sounds old school, but it seems to work better. It seems like everybody's tried this big touchscreen thing. I don't think it always works, so I would prefer some old school elements. Other manufacturers do it better. That's all I'm going to say. Other than that though, it's a very nice car. It never breaks traction, it's all-wheel drive. It's very secure, but looking out over the bonnet, you've got some nice textures. You can see the end of the Mach-E, which is helpful. There is quite a massive blind spot in the C-pillar, but you get standard parking sensors and a camera, so that's not too much of a problem. Other than that, it's fine. It's one of those cars that feels like it's on the premium end, but certainly not super luxurious. And I think the problem is that this car, as it stands, is over £60,000. So I expect a lot from that kind of money, and it's not quite there.
Now that obviously just depends on your preferences, because the Tesla does feel really nice and bright inside, and it does feel really fast. It's got 434 brake horsepower, nearly 170 more than the Mach-E. Okay, it's got slightly less torque, but it is lighter, despite weirdly having a larger battery. Unsurprisingly, that all makes it feel pretty fast. It can get to 62 miles per hour in 5 seconds dead, and you know that is enough to notice the difference. I don't think top speeds necessarily matter that much, but getting there does. Now, as far as the electric experience goes, Tesla pretty much nails it. The Y does everything well. Brake regeneration, steering is lovely and balanced. To the way it goes around a corner, absolutely flat. It's a really well-rounded drive until it hits a badly surfaced section of road. And at that point, the Y does display the big chink in its armour. So it can go around corners like nobody's business, but that suspension stiffness means that on the wrong road, the Model Y can sometimes ride a bit like a brick. Hit a big enough bump and it's going to get your attention. Now, that's not so much of a problem if you stick to main roads, but it is more of an issue if you travel a lot on country roads or badly surfaced roads, and it could be a deal breaker for you. I know loads of you get very cross with me in the comments below because I'm quite chilled about the ride quality, but honestly, I tend not to drive at full pelt on country roads on a regular basis, so I guess it doesn't bother me that much. And I think there are so many positives about that car that it's also a trade-off that I am more than prepared to make. So, Tom, have we reached a decision?
I think we have. Unfortunately, I think it's quite a bit of a whitewash because this Tesla Model Y long range offers quite a lot more than that Ford Mustang Mach-E for pretty much exactly the same money. So It charges faster,
Yeah.
it's got more range, it's got more space inside, it's physically faster. I mean, what else do you need?
Yeah, and also let me just throw this one at you as well. If you went for the long range version of the Mach-E,
Yeah,
which would give you pretty similar range to that very car,
yeah.
it's actually going to cost you £7,000 more.
That's too much, really.
It is. You could buy a Citroen Ami with that extra money and
You're
have
obsessed.
a pet.
She's obsessed. The weird thing about it is that car might have a few more standard options than the Model Y, but
Yeah.
it's not enough to bridge the gap, is it really?
No, it's not. Although there is one area where actually the gaps aren't quite bridged on the Tesla, and that's the shut lines.
Yeah.
The build quality's not quite there, is it, on it? Not in the same way that you get with the Ford.
The Ford is better built, but do you know what? For £7,000, I think I could live with it.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I'm not going to go around with my measuring tape, I'm afraid. I'm just not going to do that. You are also weirdly going to wait far less for that as well.
Ah, yes. You can get
it's
hold of them.
12 to 18 months currently for a Mach-E, isn't
Yeah,
it?
7 to 9 on the Tesla, and if
Yeah.
you actually time it right, it can be a bit less than that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let us ask the question. Would you rather
Have a Tesla Model Y long range
or a Ford Mustang Mach-E? Should we do
no, I'm having this.
I'm having this too.
I'm having this.
It's this one.
It just makes more sense. That's weird though, isn't it?
We've agreed.
We've
again.
agreed on something again.
Yeah.
Yes, we're getting better at this. High five. Okay.
As ever, if you want to know more about the Ford Mustang Mach-E or the Tesla Model Y, or any of their competition, then please do log on to electrifying.com and we'll help you figure out which electric car might suit you best.